නිවසේ මෙවැනි මතු පිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන Vim Cleaners.
Tonight, stay in your province. Authorities relax restrictions further, but extend interprovincial travel for 2 more weeks. Express arrests. 7 Express Pearl local agent officials arrested as revelations of concealment of acid leak info from port authorities emerges. Easing soon. Heavy winds leave a trail of destruction in the hill country, affecting 5,000 and killing 1.
Strong gusty winds are likely to continue today and gradual reduction can be expected after tomorrow.
Linked up. The new Kalani River Suspension Bridge gets joined in the middle after 7 years of construction. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 10th of July, 2021.
කට උත්තර නැති වෙන්න කලින් සිග්නල් ඩීප් ක්ලීන් එකකට මාරු වෙන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanayaka. Now, many restrictions put in place by the health authorities to prevent the spread of COVID-19 were relaxed today. Weddings, parties, funerals and other gatherings are now permitted. However, there is no change to the interprovincial travel restrictions for 2 more weeks.
Director General of Health Services Dr. Asala Gunawardana issued a revised set of guidelines, further relaxing the restrictions which were set in place to curb the spread of COVID-19. The guidelines which were in place were scheduled to be revised on the 19th of this month. However, with the new guidelines coming into effect today, the interprovincial travel restrictions will continue to be in place for 2 weeks starting from today. The guideline revision meanwhile sees some restrictions being eased. Places of worship in all districts are allowed to remain open and operate under the health and safety guidelines. Weddings and parties are also permitted. However, the capacity must be limited to 25% of the seating capacity or a maximum of 150 people. Funerals, except COVID-related deaths, should be conducted within 24 hours of releasing the body from the hospital with the participation of a maximum of 50 persons. Meanwhile, essential meetings can also be held by companies with only 25% of the seating capacity, while permission has been granted to hold conferences, seminars and brand launches with a maximum of 50 on-site participants. In the meantime, according to the revised guidelines, gymnasiums, indoor sporting centers and swimming pools can be opened for the public. Further, tailors and dressmakers, libraries, dine-in restaurants, cinemas, theatres and museums can also remain open but are subjected to the health and safety guidelines.
අද සේවසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයක Rhino roofing සහ ceiling sheet.
Now, Sri Lanka is set to receive its single largest consignment of a COVID vaccine tomorrow, as 2 million doses of Sinopharm is expected to touch down. It will take the number of China-manufactured vaccine doses to arrive in the island this month alone to 4 million. Meanwhile, the PCR test kit developed by the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology using RT lab technology is nearing the end of its approval procedure before moving to commercial production.
A well-known trend observed with many of the new COVID-19 variants is that most of them are virulent than the ones identified before. Their potential to kill also keeps increasing. If health authorities are to stay proactive in the current pandemic situation in terms of identifying and subjecting COVID-infected patients to a 14-day recovery period, the time spent waiting for PCR and rapid antigen test results must be cut down. Currently, the PCR tests conducted in the country take up to 6 to 8 hours to produce results. However, earlier this year, the Sri Lanka Institute for Nanotechnology received approval from the National Medicines Regulatory Authority to produce test kits based on the RT lamp technology. What sets it apart is that the tech can produce PCR results in just 30 minutes. Since then, the Slintech has cut through various red tapes and has obtained the approval from government agencies to import the necessary chemicals for the production of the test kits.
We did the small scale production and we submit the samples to the MRI and IDH. So we are waiting for the results. MRI and IDH, they have to submit the results to the MRI. After getting the results, we will be able to get the product registration document. So after getting the product registration, we can start the manufacturing process.
In the meantime, the island's daily PCR rate has picked up in recent days after the numbers plummeting due to health sector trade union action. Yesterday, 13,940 PCR tests and 3,359 rapid antigen tests were conducted, 3,000 more than the day before. Those tests yielded 1,537 positive results from all the districts, with the exception of Anuradhapura. However, in contrast, the Gampa district reported the highest daily infections yesterday, with 475. The remaining two districts of the Western Province, Colombo and Kalutara, confirmed 257 and 110 new cases each, leading to the overall confirmation of 842 infections from the Western Province. In addition, 22 imported cases were also included in yesterday's caseload. As for today, the chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 puts the number of new cases at 1,515 so far, taking the number of active cases in the island to 28,572. On the country's vaccination front, health officials were able to successfully vaccinate 181,261 people yesterday. 155,451 of them were given the first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine, while the rest, 24,478 persons, were administered with the second dose of the same jab. Further, the Pfizer vaccine was administered to 1,284 persons in the area of Mana, while the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine was given to 48 persons. Sri Lanka, meanwhile, is set to take delivery of a further 2 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China tomorrow morning. State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Chanda Jayasumana, said that 2 Sri Lankan airline flights left the island today to fly the consignment to the island. It will be the largest single consignment of COVID vaccine to touch down in the country. As for COVID recoveries, there were 1,804 today. It puts the island's total number of people in Sri Lanka to have recovered from the novel coronavirus at 242,839.
Big 3.
The Asian Development Bank has approved a loan of $150 million for Sri Lanka to purchase vaccines against the coronavirus disease and improve vaccination information, delivery and monitoring systems. The project is part of ADB's $9 billion Asia-Pacific Vaccine Access Facility, launched in December 2020 to offer rapid and equitable vaccine-related support to ADB developing member countries. ADB President Masatsugu Asakawa has said that the support is part of the ADB's commitment to help Sri Lanka overcome the pandemic and achieve a sustainable economic recovery. The ADB says that the loan will help finance the purchase of safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines to immunize about 4 million Sri Lankans, contributing to the government's target to reach 80% of vaccine coverage by 2023. Sri Lanka will need to review its current labour laws if it seeks to attract foreign investment for the country's industries and reach its maritime and financial hub status. That's the view of former director of the Postgraduate Institute of Management, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri. Speaking to Indiviri Amuatha on our current affairs programme at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Professor Dharmasiri added that investors may not consider the prospect of dealing with labour laws heavily balanced against employers as favourable, and that changes need to be made to root out the archaic and bring about fresh, modern outlook.
Sri Lanka has set itself a lofty development target of 7% by 2025. By that time, it also aims to take the migration from middle income to upper middle income country, earning $30 billion in exports every year. However, with the government looking to lay out the red carpet for foreign direct investment in the financial, industrial, commercial and residential sectors through the Colombo Port City project, what will it take for investors to look at Sri Lanka with a bit more optimism? Speaking to Indiviri Amuatha on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Professor Ajantha Dharmasiri of the Postgraduate Institute of Management at the Sri Jayawardhanapura University says that it should start with balancing the scales in terms of Sri Lanka's labour laws.
When we talk about development, we have big investments in the country, for example, the port city. We have a separate, a new city in the making outside of Colombo. At the same time, new investments coming into the country. How do we look at transforming, changing or adapting our HR practices on par with international practices to cater to the futuristic needs of the country?
Now, I have seen a lot of investors complain about the archaic labour laws in Sri Lanka. And then we have to have a holistic look. We have to look at the employee well-being for sure. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, employee expectation. An investor would come with certain expectation in mind. So there has to be facilitation. I recall recently we had the largest virtual investor forum in Sri Lanka, where I spoke about Sri Lanka being #1 in terms of human development in South Asia. So we are the preferred destination for South Asia with regard to human development for an investor to think of coming and investing. So we have the excellent ground in that sense. But I think what we need to do is we need to change some legislature. And we need to have one-stop solution where efficiency is a key factor. Because I know a lot of people complain they are being sent around and they are being pushed around, so they get frustrated. So ease of doing business is one area where you need to really focusing on. From human resource point of view, I think the time has come for us to critically look at some archaic practices, and we need to be more productivity oriented, ensuring that people really do a decent work for the salary they earn, at the same time looking at their well-being. So a bit more balanced rather than more employee-friendly, labor-friendly laws, to change it a little bit to have a bit more balance. So that could be a good starting point.
Further, in response to the issue of the country's burgeoning public sector and what the country's probable solution could be to improving productivity to match multinational demands, Professor Dharmasiri says that it has to start with having a single focused direction that remains unaffected by political changes.
Why I ask you continuously about state enterprises is because this is a big problem. We talk about white elephant investments, we talk about state enterprises, bottlenecks, red tape when it comes to investments. But when you bring all these together, what approach should Sri Lanka take?
My answer is crafting the right set of strategies and implementing. I would say the big 5 strategic questions are very much relevant to a country as well. I mean, the answer to the question who we are, and then where we want to be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, the strategic direction, irrespective of which government in power, who is having a particular ministry, unchanged charter where we have one strategic direction. And then where are we? A critical, honest assessment of where we are. And the 4th one, how do we go there? The crafting of the right set of strategies and executing them. And the 5th one is sadly lacking. How do we know whether we are making progress? The real key performance indicators, sad to say, in the very sometimes in the state-owned enterprises, the key performance indicators become key political indicators, where they are being manipulated. If those 5 questions can be properly answered, it boils down to that starting with leadership and together collective brainstorming, having the right strategies crafted, having the right strategies executed. Execution matters. Execution brings excellent results.
Do you think this can be applied to the state sector also, where there is political changes, political involvement? Every 5 years, employees are given a change of direction, change of mission, vision. Is this possible?
If there's a will, there's a way. I think rather than cursing the darkness, let's light a candle. It again comes to the particular leader of that particular institution, where rather than saying no, let's start where we can and let's make it happen.
We will see you on the other side of this break with the latest on the Express Pearl incident.
ගෙදරකට තේ හදනවා කියන්නේ වෙනම වැඩ. එක එක්කිනාගේ පදම වෙනස්. මැලිබන් තේ ගෙදර පදමට තේ.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Sea Consortium Lanka Private Limited was accused in court today of concealing information of an acid leak aboard the vessel Express Pearl before it entered Sri Lanka's territorial waters. The development came about when 7 employees of the company, which is the local agent of the vessel that caught fire, creating one of the worst marine disasters on record, were produced before court. 7 officials of the Sea Consortium Lanka Private Limited, which is the local agent of the feeder vessel Express Pearl that was charred in Sri Lanka's territorial waters in May, were arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department this morning. Later, they were produced before Colombo Additional Magistrate Bandara Nelundeniya. Appearing on behalf of the plaintiff, State Counsel Malik Aziz told the court that the first leakage of nitric acid from a container aboard the Express Pearl had occurred on the 11th of May. He added that on the 19th of May at around 1:37 p.m, before the vessel entered Sri Lanka's territorial waters, the ship's captain and its crew had informed the vessel's local agent of a nitric acid leakage from a container on board. Further, despite the information being communicated to the local agent, the company concealed that information from the harbour master and had given a statement to the effect that all the dangerous cargo aboard are stored appropriately. The State Counsel added that by concealing the information at the very inception, the officials of the vessel's local agent have committed an offence under the country's penal code. Subsequently, President's Counsel Anura Maddegoda, appearing on behalf of the defendants, told the court, though the nitric acid leak aboard the ship happened on the 11th of May, the ship's crew had not informed of it to the local agent until the vessel entered Sri Lanka's territorial waters on the 19th of May. He noted that upon the conveyance of this information for the first time at 4:45 p.m. on the 19th of May, his clients attempted to notify the harbour master of it. However, the office of the harbour master had been closed at the time. Further, the vessel's local agent had informed the harbour master of the acid leak during the morning of the 20th of May. However, despite there being 24 hours from then until the vessel caught fire, the harbour master did not take any action to prevent the fire from being erupted. He added that a team from the Navy and the Ports Authority boarded the ship the day before it caught fire for an observation, and at that point, only smoke was emanating from the vessel. As such, he said that the total responsibility over the fire aboard the Express Pearl cannot be passed over to his clients. He also informed the court that his clients have already paid 721 million rupees in compensation to the government. After considering the submissions made by the two parties, the additional magistrate ordered the release of all the suspects on a surety of 2.5 million rupees. Now, with the launch of a program that aims to increase Sri Lanka's annual coconut harvest up to 3.6 billion nuts per year, a total of 4 million coconut saplings were planted across the island today. The project is part of government efforts to improve local agricultural yields and also increase the country's export offerings as well.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa presided over a program that aims to plant 4 million coconut saplings across the island, held at the Valikati estate owned by the Chilla Plantation Company this morning. The national program was organized by the State Ministry of Coconut and Kittul Palm Cultivation Promotion and the Ministry of Plantations. A total of 4 million saplings were planted across the country today, in line with the program's launch. Another aim of the project will be to increase the country's annual coconut harvest to 3.6 billion nuts from its current 2.8 billion nuts per year.
In other local stories, Minister of Mass Media Kehiliya Rambukwala responded to a statement made by opposition leader Sajith Premadas on Wednesday, where he alleged a government conspiracy against a news outlet. While rejecting the opposition leader's statement as an outright fabrication, the minister did, however, confirm that legal advice had been sought over what he termed actions by media outlets that exceeded their mandate and that there is nothing secretive about the process.
විපක්ෂ නායකවරයා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ විශේෂ එළිදරව් කියලා මේ සිරස මාධ්‍ය විකාශන බලපත්‍රය අත්හිටුවට යනවා කියනවා. ඒකවල ජනමාධ්‍ය අමාත්‍යවරයා විදිහට රජයේ පැත්තෙන් අපි දැක්කේ නැහැ මේ ගැන කිසිම විනෝදවාදකින් පිළිතුරක් ලබා දෙන්න.
සම්පූර්ණ පරිචය බොරුවක් කරේ. එතන එක දෙයක් හැබැයි කියන්නට ඕන. කිව්වා මේ රහසිගතව නීතිඥවරුන් ගෙනල්ලායි කියලා. රහසිගතව නෙමෙයි නීතිඥවරු ගෙනාවම. මොකද යම් කිසි නාලිකාවක රාමුවෙන් පිට කටයුතු කරනවා නම් අපි කැලෑ නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නේ. ලංකාවේ ඉන්න ප්‍රබලම නීතිඥකරු කීප දෙනෙක් ගෙන්නුවා. ගෙනල්ලා කතා කරා මෙවැනි දෙයක් අපි දකිනවා යම් නාලිකාවල් වල ඒ සම්බන්ධව අපිට නීතිමය උපදෙස් දෙන්නයි කියලා. ඒ කරනවා පමණක් නෙමෙයි ඒ සම්බන්ධව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා නම් කිසිම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැතුව ඒ සම්බන්ධව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා.
ඒක ඔබතුල මේ මාධ්‍ය නිදහස ගැන ඒ වලින් කතා කරා.
මාධ්‍ය නිදහසයි නීතියයි පටලවාගෙන තමුන්නාන්සලා අර මොකද්ද කියනවා මේ වල්බూరు නිදහස කියලා. එනිසා එවැනි නිදහසක් ලෝකයේ කොහෙවත් දීලා නැහැ. නීතියේ රාමුව තුළ තමයි මේ නිදහස ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න වෙන්නේ. එක නාලිකාවක් නෙමෙයි. මේ ක්‍රමවේදයන් සම්බන්ධව ගත යුතු ක්‍රියාමාර්ග සහ නීතිමය තත්ත්වය කුමක්ද කියලා. ඒ ගැන පැහැදිලි විස්තරයක් අපිට දීලා තියෙනවා. ඔය මාධ්‍ය කියන නිදහස ඔය සියලු දේ නීතියේ රාමුවට යටත් වෙන්න ඕන. රටේ මූලික නීතිය තමයි ව්‍යවස්ථාව. ඒ නිසා ඒක පාවිච්චි කරමින් Tamanට ඕන කරන තක්කඩි වැඩ ඒ වෙනුවෙන් ගත යුතු ක්‍රියාමාර්ග තිබෙනවා නම් නීතියේ රාමුව තුළ කිසිම කසකයක් නැහැ. ඒ ගැනීමට පසුබට වෙන්නත් නැහැ කියන කියන්නේ.
The new Kalani Bridge at Paligura was connected at the centre over the river today. The Ministry of Roads and Highways and the Road Development Authority launched the project in 2014. The new bridge, which runs adjacent to the existing bridge, boasts of 6 lanes and is the first ever to be constructed in Sri Lanka with high-tech stay cables. The bridge does not run over columns and as such, there are no constructions built underneath it for support. Now, the weight of the bridge is borne by 4 towers, 2 on either side of the river, with high-tech stay cables running towards both banks from the centre. The construction of the new state-of-the-art bridge is expected to be completed by the end of September. Over 5,000 people have been affected by heavy winds that blew across the island yesterday, while one person died in Vallavatta when a section of concrete from a building under construction fell onto the car he was seated in. The Department of Meteorology, however, says that the showers and thundershowers and heavy winds are expected to gradually reduce from tomorrow.
A sudden strengthening of the southwestern monsoon affected over 5,000 people yesterday, especially due to the strong and gusty winds that blew across the island last night. As a result, a section of a building under construction in Vallavatta collapsed on 2 parked cars. One death was reported in the incident of a 52-year-old resident of Kaduela who was seated in one of the cars at the time. Meanwhile, several houses in the area of Egaduyana in Moratuwa were severely damaged due to the strong winds that blew across the area. Residents stated that power lines in the area were broken for around 1 kilometer. In the meantime, 2 3-wheelers parked at the Panadura hospital premises were severely damaged. Elsewhere, a tree was uprooted on the Colombo-Chilla road due to the strong winds, causing disruptions to traffic flow. Meanwhile, the Department of Meteorology says that showers or thunder showers up to 100 millimeters could be expected at times in the western, central, Sabaragamu, northwestern and southern provinces. It added that strong gusty winds up to 60 km per hour are likely to blow over the western slope of the central hills as well.
With strengthening of the southwest monsoon flow across Sri Lanka, we already experienced adverse weather conditions. Prevailing strong gusty winds are likely to continue today and gradual reduction can be expected after tomorrow. Heavy falls about 100 millimeter also likely over the western slopes of the central hills during next couple of days. When we consider the sea areas of Mannar to Pottuwil via Colombo, Galle and Hambantota will be very rough at times and it will be dangerous to venture into these sea areas.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the Colombo Stock Exchange says that it has decided to revisit the methodology of the computation of the all-share price index to determine the possibility of index movements being linked to the public float of listed company constituents of the index. This, it says, would allow the SPI to more accurately reflect the price movements of the overall stock market in relation to shares that are freely traded. The CSE will also review enforcement rules pertaining to the securities of listed companies, which are transferred to the second board due to non-compliance with the minimum public holding requirement, with the objective of discouraging such companies from remaining on the said second board for excessive periods of time. Afghan security forces personnel increased checkpoints in and around the provincial capital of Herat yesterday after Taliban fighters seized control of a key district in the western part of the province the day before. Local Afghan officials say that Taliban fighters had captured an important district in Herat province. Taliban said yesterday that the group had taken control of 85% of territory in Afghanistan. Dozens of civilians and fighters aligned with a prominent anti-Taliban commander of a private militia, Mohammad Ismail Khan, gathered at a ceremony in Herat and picked up arms and plans to fight. Now, Khan said he would support efforts by Afghan forces to claw back control of parts of western Afghanistan, including a border crossing with Iran. Khan, a former minister and a survivor of a Taliban attack in 2009, was a leading member of the Northern Alliance, whose militia helped US forces topple the Taliban in 2001. In the last week, Taliban have overrun areas bordering the 5 countries Iran, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, China and Pakistan as foreign forces end their 2-decade intervention and the domestic security situation deteriorates. The insurgents have been gaining territory for weeks but accelerated their thrust as the United States vacated its main Afghan base, effectively ending an intervention that began with the ousting of the Islamist Taliban government in 2001. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.